So thank you for staying tuned on Zoom and also here in the room. And so we have now some excellent presentations, really looking forward to it. And I welcome the first speaker, who is Juho Lindman. I really do hope I pronounce it correctly. And Juho, he is an associate professor of informatics at the University of Gothenburg in Sweden. And he is also actually the author of the OECD working paper on public governance that is titled The Uncertain Promise of Blockchain for Government, a working paper that will actually be presented very soon. I think it's now in October at the OECD. And so Professor Lindman, he will present his speech, Public Sector Blockchain Experimentation, now to you. So I give the floor to you, and you can share the screen and take the screen if you want to. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for the very kind invitation to kind of give this talk to you. So I'm giving this talk from sunny Gothenburg, and it was raining before, but now it's pretty okay. I was really intrigued by the presentations I saw earlier. Really kind of interesting things were kind of discussed, and I think actually also different kinds of blockchain applications from the public side. So I was kind of really kind of looking forward what the jury is going to decide now. As mentioned in the presentation, I have prepared most of this year for the OECD report on blockchain in government, and especially the uncertain promise of blockchain in government. So it hasn't come out yet, so I can't really go much into specifics, but I will say some words of my main findings. And I think you have had in the beginning a very interesting presentation, especially outlining the challenges, some of the challenges of blockchain for public sector. And I think there was also been some information about the EPSI, a very interesting initiative from the European Union, which I have been monitoring also quite closely. I put one slide up from my side, so you kind of get an overall understanding where I'm kind of coming from. I'm originally from Finland, but now been in Sweden for 5 years, and looking at blockchain in information systems for, I'd say, the last 4, mostly focusing on blockchain in the public sector realm. And of course, as you might know, in the beginning, when I kind of started looking at it from that perspective, there wasn't really so much to look. But now we have developed quite a lot, and especially the technical, the stack that we can use to do a number of things has developed quite a lot. I prepared like 15 minutes to my talk, so I won't go over that. So it's in 3 different parts what I want to say. So first one is to give an overall understanding of where I'm kind of looking, which perspective I'm taking to kind of look at this phenomenon. Then I'll say a few words kind of based on my empirical work and the different kind of cases that I've been looking from public sector all over the world, both in European Union, but also a little bit kind of wider, what have different countries been up to in this space. And then kind of I try to say a few kind of words about the work that will come out from the OECD. I think it's in 5 weeks or so. So stay tuned when the full report comes out. There's a lot of interesting details, I think, for anybody who is kind of working in this area. I'm also kind of super interested to hear more about your pilot, and especially ones that have already that are already kind of put to use and put into implementation to kind of learn more about them. So if you don't kind of get a chance to talk to me now, there's my contact details on the presentation that I made available. So feel free to kind of contact me also after the talk. So usually when we talk about digitalization, I just want to basically outline one thing, which is often not very obvious. So it's not only kind of movement from the specific technologies, it's more about changes in everyday life. It's how digital technologies, and in this case, mostly blockchain, is able to change societal institutions and change our lives, change how we work, change institutions, change a number of things. And this also entails changes in how public sectors work. But public sector is not maybe the easiest sector in society to change. there's a number of kind of limitations and things which need to be specifically accounted for due to the public sector's nature, I would say. And my earlier work has mostly been about what would be often called by Yochai Benkler as global cultural production or peer and social production in global scale, meaning that I've been very interested in the tensions we have between, I would say, developers or hackers, value producing communities of the internet, and then traditional institutions. And this tension has been going on for a while. And that's why I'm also super interested to give this talk at the hackathon, because I think kind of this is a very, very kind of good audience to be kind of looking into a number of these different things. Now, of course, this story you already have heard. I just kind of want to remind you that this is really another novelty item anymore. It's been 12 years since we kind of had the last economic downturn like this. But this also kind of is the 12 years we've seen since the Nakamoto paper came out. And I think this year is a little bit similar than what we had in 2008 with the kind of the economic downturn that will kind of challenge institutions, that is challenging societies and industries in different kinds of ways. So also I would strongly say that this year will also show a number of changes in the public sector, and especially maybe in terms of blockchain experimentation. So, and this is maybe my most kind of an important slide. So what we have had for a number of years already is that governments are very keen on rapidly moving towards digital transformation, changing and picking up novel technical solutions to solve their problems. And at the same time, there has been a huge interest to blockchain, both in the private side, but also on the public side. However, we haven't yet, I would say, seen the killer application. So far, the use cases we have been mostly on the experimentation slide. What we are now seeing is that the technology has matured. Now we know from private side and also kind of EPSI and taking account the different infrastructural things that are being developed also in US and with China, is that the technology has matured. So now we are in a very interesting kind of situation where we actually have a number of things that we can use to solve problems also on the public sector. We are seeing that there are kind of a lot of private sector innovation, and especially kind of this kind of global developmental things related to the crypto world, I would say in general kind of on the private side. But public sector has been a little bit lagging, and this is not because of its experimentation. I don't really kind of think that has been the problem, but it has a lot to do with how to kind of capture the potential that the technology holds. And the technology, I would seriously say, hasn't been so ready as some people would have liked it to be. But I think we are now at or have been for a while already, where the technology is kind of is there to solve these kinds of problems. I won't go through this. I want to kind of mention though that this is not, we shouldn't take this as something that's really kind of really bad. So there's a kind of lot of research on how technologies and especially technologies like blockchain are kind of distributed in society. So we have this kind of public discussion side where trade shows and popular press and consultancy reports come out. And then we have one in organizations where organizations try to take this knowledge from the public realm and make it into theirs, try to explain what they can do with that particular knowledge, how they can build their service, and even public sector situations, how they can build public service on this stack. And so as you know, there has been hype around this. And is there echo? Okay. So there has been hype around this technology, and I think there has been also. Is there a mic on, or is it mine? Okay, so there has been hype around the technology. There have been kind of, I would say lot of questions around what can actually be done in terms of the technology. And then there has been kind of two high promises made, I think, like that the technology hasn't been able to solve yet. And I think those promises towards decentralized computing, more transparent, different kind of logging systems, attestation systems, notarizations, different kinds of credentials. So all of those those are at the core of the blockchain technology. And we know now that the technology, it can actually solve many of these. And it can now do those in decentralized ways. But then we will start talking about this kind of higher, so cutting out the government entirely, or providing automatic trust, or generally kind of minimizing governance, then I think those are more kind of hype statement that need to be empirically tested and tried out. A little bit watching the clock. So I think this one is gonna be kind of my most important slide that I'm gonna today show you. So this kind of lists some of the different categories that blockchain has been used in a situations where we can actually see evidence. So we can see actual users using the technology for something, and not maybe only on experimentations, but actually trying to get user data, so data on actual users, data on actual usage, and maybe also continued use. And these kind of workflows, different kinds of login systems, we can kind of see it in those. The more difficult one and more kind of complex ones, where we're discussing decreased costs and increased efficiencies, those often are still kind of, jury's a little bit out on those ones. So I think we still need kind of more evidence around this, around this area. And this is a challenge. So for those people of us who have kind of seen what this technology is able to do in some circumstances, now need to kind of prove it, that it can also do it in a public setting. And this is my kind of this is my final slide for today's presentation. So it is important to know that we know that the technology has potential, and we know now that the public sectors of the world, different ones, are developing different kinds of things. There's an infrastructural things happening that supports this. So what we now need is to kind of monitor continued use, move from tests and experimentations and pilots into actual things that people use, and then prove with evidence, with actual usage data and user stories, that we can investigate how blockchain can help to solve these problems. Now, I'm gonna leave it at this, and I will kind of thank you for the opportunity to present some of my work. I will kind of, so when the report comes out, monitor this and the other kind of relevant channels, and you'll be able to kind of see it at that point. It will contain a little more kind of precise descriptions of some of the cases that we've been kind of looking in more detail, and focus on use and evidence that we can find in terms of public sector blockchain. Thank you.
So first of all, once more, let me thanks for the organizers for giving us the opportunity to share with you some of the insights in terms of token project, but more than the token project, I tend to say that we are going to focus on a specific practical use case, which is providing some of the basis for demonstrating and assessing some of the benefits of DLT as a general framework. So I prefer to refer to distributed ledger technology, because in my opinion, this is a more general approach to some specific implementations like blockchain or whatever other, we might have in mind. Also, frankly speaking, personally, I feel, as you can imagine, for those who are living in the northern part of Europe, so these are quite tough moments for here in Spain with this COVID-19 pandemic. So also my condolences for the families here in Europe, and in particular also for the ones nearby in Spain, France, etc. and also my hope that everything will improve in the short term. Okay. Okay. So concerning my presentation today, as you will see, is a quite practical one. The title, When the Data Marketplace Meets DLT, the Paradigm of the Data Economy, intends to share with you a quite practical approach to DLT and the support of DLT to the digital ecosystem. I think this is one pioneering use case which demonstrates how DLT might be used. As you can see also, I present, this is a presentation based on a joint collaboration between University of Cantabria and the Santander municipality. We started more than 12 years, indeed, right now, 11 years, to collaborate in this digital transformation process, right? So now, at time being, everyone is talking about digitalization, digital transformation, etc., which was not so usual more than 10 years ago. So let me start how everything started, and I think that the title gives you the hints on how everything started. So what you are able to see here is the real deployment that we have in the city of Santander. Santander is a medium-sized city placed in the northern part of Spain, 200 kilometers west side from the French border. And in 2010, we started a joint collaboration with different partners for deploying more than 10,000 IoT devices around the city, including the university campus, aiming at first, of course, to deploy a research infrastructure. This is important. So a research infrastructure which should enable to test, to operate on top of it for the research community, not just for the research community, but in particular also for the research community. But also the second aim or the second objective was based on the fact that we were deploying such a massive IoT infrastructure. Let's provide support to the city for increasing the portfolio of services and for improving the legacy urban services. So as you can realize, so we have 3 vertices in this triangle, as usual in all the triangles, and now we are evolving towards a square, adding a 4th vertex. The first vertex on the at the bottom in the right hand side was the deployment of IoT infrastructure. So at time being, things are starting to be a little bit more mature, and deploying IoT infrastructure, although it's still complex, is less complex than a few years ago. So the idea is that we were deploying sensors first, for example, monitoring environmental parameters like CO2, PM2.5, PM5, PM7.5, noise, temperature, humidity, noise, I said before, light intensity coming from the street lamps, light intensity coming from other light sources, traffic intensity, and many other parameters that you can imagine are relevant for organizing the city in a better shape, making the life of the citizens better. So once we had this IoT infrastructure deployed, and I have to say that it's an infrastructure, an open infrastructure, so any of you can access to it. Any of you can gather data from it. Later on, I will explain how to do it for those who are not familiar. Also, we develop applications. We develop applications for the citizens, applications aiming at making the citizens involved in this digital transformation process. So the idea that the citizens were able to notify to the municipality that some things were not working properly in an area of the city because, for example, the street light was not working or the urban mobiliary was not appropriately kept, or whatever other incidents you might have in mind happening in your city. Of course, as you can imagine also, the fact that citizens were reporting such events and sharing those events by the municipality itself with the whole community, that stress the way in which the municipality should react against those, let's say, those kinds of applications. Then a second derivative on this process was to, based on the fact that we were deploying sensors and putting some applications available for the citizens, were to increase the portfolio of services. And then at the top, on the left-hand side, you can see some of the services that were included. So, for example, in 2012, we had a quite interesting augmented reality service, park and gardens irrigation, environmental monitoring, etc. So, information that was relevant for the citizens. And the way that we know, or we knew that was relevant for the citizens was because in all the actions that we took, and always in agreement with the municipality, we share with the citizens workshops, we share with them some kind of questionnaires, asking them about the priorities, the services that they wanted to improve, etc., etc. Then the third derivative on that direction was the concept of co-creation. Then we started in 2014, 2015, the co-creation process. Co-creation also once more involving the citizens. It is important, it's very important, once we refer to digitalization, once we refer to DLT, once we refer to all this stuff, which is the role, which is the impact to the citizen. Otherwise, we are going just to use technology without any final aim for the citizen, at least from the perspective of making him or her participant of such transformation. So this co-creation process was aiming at providing a set of tools, very intuitive tools, by means of which citizens and any stakeholder could develop applications, solutions, to think about potential problems that they can solve in the city, etc., etc. So this is what we call the co-creation. So making the citizen some kind of visionary stakeholder with the ability, providing the tools, with the ability to solve the issues. So that was the process that we follow during these 10 years. And now, in this fourth vertex, which so far I have not yet drawn, we are now evolving towards this digital market, towards this digital ecosystem, and integrating DLT. So this is some of the examples, right? Just for providing you some hints and just not drawing things. So these are the real stuff that we have been developing. I really enjoy. I was more than 10 years younger than now, once I was deploying things in the street, testing, assessing, making experimentation. So we pioneer solutions, as you can see here, for sensing using mobile vehicles. So those are this is part of the public bus transportation system. Also using the fast shades, deploying in the parks and gardens, deploying the street lamps, deploying for parking services, deploying in the street, also taking into consideration the architectural integration of the system, making the deployment seamless in those areas in which it was needed for avoiding to, let's say, provide any interference between the architectural, the architecture design, the architectural urban design and the technology, and things like that, including the panels for the drivers, etc., etc. So these are some of the examples which are interesting. So on this right-hand side, you can see how things are managed at time being. So in the past, for monitor, this is just an example of traffic of parking lots, of the occupancy of parking lots outdoors, and how the information is kept on runtime based on particular needs for managing, for future planning, etc. So the idea is that now every outdoor parking lot is well characterized, and for any company wishing to exploit the service, it has the access to such information aiming at improving the service or improving, or let's say integrating or providing extra services. This is, I tend to say this is some kind of strategic information. And I highlight this fact because once you have a strategic information, it means that later, sooner or later, we will need some kind of tool aiming at trace the use of such information once we disclose it. This is information, let's say, related to the noise monitoring. So as you can see, we are able to monitor. This is just for, let me remember, this is for one, yes, exactly. This is for one node. This is for one node monitoring more than 24 hours in one day, so per day, sorry. So several days during the year. So we know how noise is behaving in different areas of the city. So you can see here on the, once more on the right hand side, at the bottom, you can see the noise, the heat map. So we are interpolating. Also, as you can imagine, we are not able to deploy, let's say, 100% dense noise sensor mesh, but what we do is we interpolate. We can use different interpolation models for creating such a heat map, right? So once more, having this noise is relevant. So what is relevant? Because, for example, if one company is aiming at, let's say, making a proposal in a tender for managing the traffic in the city, accessing to this information once more is strategic. So how to organize the traffic, not just based on the traffic intensity, but also according to the noise and according to the CO emissions. So far, the way in which the cities have been organizing traffic is just based on one parameter. It's a typical monoparameter optimization process. What we suggest in different papers in the last years is to optimize based on a multi-parametric approach. And multi-parametric approach whitening the different parameters according to the priorities of the city. This is also one of the practical learnings that we got during the last years. So then it comes. So as I have highlighted in my previous slides, what we have is a plethora of data sets, as you can imagine. So we have information concerning for bike hirings, air quality, cultural agenda, points of interest. So all this kind of data, we are collecting those data for more than 10 years right now, including, for example, not just those ones, but as you can imagine, also we have data concerning the usage of the waste containers. So this allows to optimize the routes of the trucks collecting the garbage around the city. It's not the same. Now we know that, for example, once it is raining, between 20 and 30% decrease in the use of non-organic waste is being used, is being made by the citizens, which means that the trucks can optimize the routes, reducing consumption, reducing noise, emissions, etc. So all this information creates a real digital ecosystem. For me, this is a real digital ecosystem in which the value are around the data. So there are many references in which always the data. Here we have a real example in which we have the data. And what is more important is not just the data per se, the value, but the ability in terms that the data trigger the needs for cooperating among the different stakeholders. So, for example, the waste company needs to cooperate with the traffic management company, aiming at optimizing the routes according to the traffic intensity during the different schedules in the city. So these kind of synergies are the ones that in a very straight way are raised by the digital ecosystem. So far, we are on this phase just before starting token, as you can see, and then what we propose more than 1 year ago, once we were preparing the project, is, guys, based on the fact that we have DLT technology becoming mature, based on the fact that we have plethora of data supporting the services in the city, what we need is to provide the way for the city, but also for the citizens, and I will explain you why, to monitor how the data are used by third parties. And this is very important. It's not just a matter of making data transactions or data economy, which was the main purpose of the data marketplace, but it's also the need to trace how data are used and by whom. This gives the ability to characterize the use of the data, and later on will provide us with the ability to fix some kind of, I don't know, attributes for further data transactions, for further data economy, or whatever. So the point is that now we are in the process of integrating DLT technology with our data marketplace through the FIWARE framework. For us, FIWARE provides the, let's say, the general framework on top of which we're making the integration of DLT technology with the data marketplace. And this allows to trace the use of the data. The use of the data published by whom? Either by the municipality, either by the waste management company, or either by the citizen. As I explained you before, the citizens are part of this ecosystem, co-creating, providing applications, or providing data. And they are wishing to know who are using their data. For such traceability process, once more, DLT technology is bringing us the solution. Also, we have further applications. So, for example, there are some kind of sensible data. So once, for example, I have to pay whatever tax or etc. So I can use DLT, but this is quite, I tend to say, much more, let's say, known use case for DLT. However, it's not the case for this data produced either by municipalities, companies, or citizens. And that is what I wanted to share with you. So here I put an example in which we have the municipality collaborating with the waste management company, publishing the data. Then the waste management company needs data from a transportation company and also from a traffic management company in the city. They set up some kind of agreements. As you can imagine, also we are defining some kind of service level agreements in terms of fostering the smart contracts. So also the reliability of the data, the trustworthiness of the data will play a key role in this ecosystem. So far, we have not yet implemented that, but we are at least in the process of planning such natural evolution. And that is what I wanted to share with you. Thank you once more for the organizers, and of course, open for any question that you might have. If I don't manage to hear you, you can send me an email to me, and I will be glad to provide an answer as soon as possible. Thank you so much. I cannot hear you, so I don't know any. I think that before starting my the presentation, I was able to hear one of the colleagues.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, fantastic.
Okay, can you still hear me?
Yes, fantastic.
Yes. Okay, so thank you for your presentation. I think very insightful. I know that List, for instance, is also working a lot on IoT on the topic. I think it's a very good idea. Very good things. Good. Okay, there's a question in the room here. Yes.
Okay. Yes, I just wanted to ask, how do you see the connectivity issue of IoT devices being cellular or some different networks work with distributed ledger that is highly asynchronous?
I mean, let's correlate the IoT network with the DLT process. So IoT technology or IT infrastructure is gathering data, then those data are exposed on a context broker, and once we expose on the context broker, we let's say transfer those data in the context broker toward the Orion context broker towards the DLT stuff. So I tend to decorrelate. So what means contextual information, more or less real-time information, with the one that will be processed later on, aiming at tracing this data usage.
Okay, that answers your question. Okay. No other questions in the room. Okay, Luis, thank you very much for your presentation. And yes, so if you have any other questions, feel free to contact him directly. And so we then come to the third speaker today. That is Adnan Imeri. There is the camera. Okay, that's Adnan Imeri from the ITIS Department of LIST, Luxembourg Institute of Science and Technologies. We'll stay in the field of IoT actually because his presentation is entitled Blockchain and IoT Integrated Approach for a Trusted and Secured Process to Manage the Transport of Dangerous Good. So Adnan, the floor is yours. And this time it's it's a physical presentation. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you also for this opportunity given to me to share my current research regarding the blockchain and IoT integration to achieve the digitalization in the process of transport of dangerous goods, and also to increase the trust in this process, which is composed of several stakeholders which need to fulfill in order to increase or enhance the trust, security, and to improve the process of transport of dangerous goods. Some aspect of the performance and the cost measurements are highlighted because in the context of this study, supply chain might be an issue in terms of large number of stakeholders cooperating. Finally, we will present some aspects. We will summarize this presentation and highlight some aspects which could be seen as a further work. Okay, so the scientific context about this research is subject is the dangerous good. Dangerous good means any substance which is defined, any substance which exposes a certain level of risk for the human environment properties. For the living organism is considered as a dangerous good. One example, very worst example of the dangerous good is the situation which happened in the Beirut last time in Lebanon with the blast. There was a ton of dangerous good hidden somewhere there. The context is to improve the safety and the security in the process of transport and management of dangerous good. we have a complex process because there are plenty of involved regulatory frameworks which force the process, and there are plenty of stakeholders which cooperate to transport, manage, and maybe sometimes to destroy the dangerous good. And as we mentioned, the problem is very complex because of the regulation which impose from the local government, international government, and a lot of policies which are implied in this process. The stakeholders' involvement in this process came from the business environment, the regulatory authorities which impose rules and regulation. There are government authorities which monitor and govern this process. There are security responders which need to respond in case of emergency, and also the involved citizens. In general, the process required to manage sensitive information, which in advance need to be verified, secured, and shared among the stakeholders. Also, today, the process is organized in a way that a lot of paperwork are done in order to start the process, follow the process, and end the process of dangerous good. And there are human in the loop to fulfill this paperwork. And there is plenty of error. There is plenty of room for the errors in this process. Also, as long as the process remains mostly the manual, to react in the situation where the accident happening is quite hard. So we encounter several scientific challenges, but among them we highlight how to turn the process or part of the process from the manual work into the digital. So removing the human in the loop to avoid their errors. And also another big scientific challenge which consider is how to translate the paper-based regulation articles sourced from the regulatory framework at national or international level in a digital way in order to impose them in the supply chain of dangerous good. And another challenge is how to collect securely and trustfully share the information which are collected from the physical object, also from the stakeholders, and to share them with the involved parties in this process. And how to ensure the traceability and transparency along the supply chain, including even the context of the cross-border. This means that the supply chain of dangerous good can be organized for example, 3 or 4 countries. Then the idea is how to be able to follow the process in an end-to-end manner, not to skip or to cut the traceability in the cross-border and not to have the information where this dangerous good is ending up. And to achieve these, to respond to these scientific challenges, we employ 3 types of technologies, or let's say we use the blockchain in order to store immutable information, to be able to deploy a decentralized network in order all the stakeholders they can join easily on the blockchain. We use the Internet of Things or IoT supplies in order to turn the physical object into a digital interactive object, so we can grab data from the for example, containers of dangerous goods that put them on the internet. And we use design methods based on MDA or model-driven architecture in order to allow us to design such a system based on a standardized methodology. So if we turn back and perform some sort of state-of-the-art, we found that currently the process is paper-based. There are plenty of information systems that helps to manage currently the transport of dangerous good. Usually these systems are called decision support system. Mainly their work is to perform a risk calculation for the transport of dangerous good. Also to solve the problem of scheduling, and they perform some sort of monitoring of dangerous good by imposing the IoT device on the process itself. But the problem with them is that usually they are centralized or they are partially hosted on the cloud. And we don't have any formal way to verify that the information is immutable on these solutions. So also from the aspect of the state of the art from blockchain and IoT, there are plenty of work now, I might say. Some aspects of using the blockchain and IoT are in the healthcare. There are intentions to solve the privacy issue, and also there are plenty of scenarios tried to be applied on the Industry 4.0 by proposing some new architectures in order to manage the process in this industry. Compared to this solution or approach has some significant differences because it provides a solution to the process which is governed by the authorities, introduce various stakeholders, including also the citizen part of the system. It covers the process in an end-to-end manner and digitally incorporates all the objects which are part of the system, of the process. So the first component in our proposed approach is model-driven architecture, which allow us to design BPMN models which are based on a regulatory framework. The second component is the blockchain and IoT, combination of the blockchain and IoT with the certified IoT nodes. And the third component is the deployment or the architecture for the deployment of our approach. The model-driven architecture is a method which allows us to take a decision at early stage of designing the system. Indeed, MDA is an approach, but we employ a method in order to use the MDA. It allows us to identify the process for transport of dangerous goods. We have a prior process which we have identified. We have the process during, which means that during the transport, and we have the process which are post-transport of dangerous goods, means that when the dangerous goods are delivered. And as a method, it allows us to take a decision in which way we will design our system and what are the principal design which need to consider by having in mind the functional and non-functional requirements. So the blockchain and IoT, we have as a second component of our approach, it allows us to have a certified IoT nodes, which means that each IoT device should be certified, meaning that registered and authenticated in the blockchain full node. The second level is the lightweight node, or usually we use a Raspberry Pi in order to fulfill this second layer of our architecture. The lightweight node allows us to authenticate the IoT device, to store the transaction received from the IoT device, which are in the L3 level, to send or to aggregate the transaction to the full blockchain node. While the full blockchain node means that it has the entire ledger of the transaction, while the lightweight have all these options showed here, but without complete ledger of transaction. So if we, just one aspect of the deploying, we consider that the three-layer architecture allows us to deploy the IoT device over the area. For example, the area means the premises of the stakeholders which manage or transport this sort of dangerous good. While we can use the Raspberry Pi as a mobile device and to gather this information and then further to send this information to the blockchain. In case the connection to the full node of the blockchain is missing or down, then Raspberry Pi aggregates all this transaction on the first attempt. When the network is back again, it sends all the transactions. The performance and the cost measurements, as long as we deal with the IoT device, we have like hundreds of transactions. And for designing such a system, the first step to consider is to perform some statistical analysis. How many transactions you need? Is it the blockchain supportive enough in order to capture all this information coming from IoT device, and also to raise a question which has been raised just in one of the presentation before. Do we need the blockchain, and is the selected blockchain appropriate for such a use case? And also it's recommended from our approach and from the information we have from the data that it is recommended to perform data aggregation by using smart contracts, so to avoid the sort of information which are useless for the process. And regarding the cost, IoT devices might cost depend on the granularity of the supply chain, and also problem or issue might be the long range network to who you trust to send this information to the full blockchain node. And as a summary, we have implemented the proof of concept for our approach. We have the first result based on the lab data, and all this information are available for the testing and setting up the Euro environment in Euro, just to test and to see how this information are flowing by lightweight and full node of our approach. So this is the end of the presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much.